Let tonight's loss serve as a wake-up call for how this playoff race is going to go. The Kings are done in by a horrible first quarter and can never really recover. We're going to talk about the Kings' struggles in their loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Plus, you're going to hear from General Manager Monty McNair right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season long. Today presented by FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports reporter and producer for ABC 10. Hey, I'm back inside the Golden One Center. Very happy to be back and very glad that we have Kings basketball back in Sacramento. However, that excitement of having Kings basketball back wore off pretty damn quickly with how this game got started. An abysmal first quarter, and before we dive into the specifics of this first quarter, like I mentioned in the introduction, this needs to be a wake-up call for the Sacramento Kings for how the remainder of this season is going to go. Because from the jump, teams are going to bring physicality, teams are going to bring a sense of urgency, and whether it's on this home floor or on the road, especially playing teams that are behind the Sacramento Kings who see the Kings as a team with a target on their back, a team to go out and get that doesn't have the experience that many of these other teams in the Western race have to try and jump on. The Kings need to realize that this is what they're going to face almost every single night for the remainder of the season. And hell, they might even take on some teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, which they have twice in a row in OKC. Even though their seasons are over, some of these teams like the opportunity to play spoiler a little bit and wouldn't mind knocking the Kings down or to a peg and feeling good about it. The remainder of the schedule, I've said time and time again, and we know it's almost obvious at this point, it's not going to be easy. But the Sacramento Kings need to not make it harder on themselves by not being ready to go like they weren't tonight. From the jump, teams are going to bring pressure. From the jump, teams are going to attempt to knock the Kings out of their game. And I use knock specifically because physicality is something that outside of the defensive struggles that we know are a big issue for this team, physicality has been a way to disrupt the Sacramento Kings all season long. You look at a lot of the losses and you don't necessarily see physicality show up in the box score too much, or sometimes it's hidden in like points in the paint or steals, forced turnovers, whatever. But when you watch the game, you can see teams bringing a physical presence that sometimes the Sacramento Kings have a hard time matching or overcoming. Look at what the Toronto Raptors did the final game here before that 7-game road trip. They came in and out-muscled the Sacramento Kings and blew them out on their home floor. And it looked like we were going to have another blowout tonight with how the Dallas Mavericks started this game. The Kings were not ready for the physicality and the intensity that the Mavericks brought to this game. And look, especially when the Kings are playing teams that are behind them in the standings, and that's going to be the majority of the teams that they play for the remainder of the season, at least at this point in time, they are going to come with that sense of urgency that the Kings need to be ready for. The first quarter, Kings are outscored 45-25. And before I get more into that, if the Kings are going to be as good of an offense as we know they are, I mean, statistically, we see one of the best offenses in the NBA, right? If that is going to be your meal ticket, if that is going to be what you lean on to carry you through this rough stretch and get you into the playoffs and secure a top 4 seed, then you need to make it reliable. And even though the Sacramento Kings scored 114 points, they did not have a good offensive night. Even though the Kings shot around 50% from the field, it was not a good offensive night. And then you look at the three-point shooting, which was a struggle this entire road trip, and it appears that those road trip struggles carried into this home game. If the Kings are going to use their offense to overcome their defensive inefficiencies, that means the three-point shot has to be there significantly more than it's been over the last 8 or so games. Even 9 games, if I remember correctly, the Kings did not shoot very well against the Toronto Raptors. So if that's your strength, find a way to make it reliable again. And I understand that there are tired legs, and that's one of the main reasons why the Kings have had such a colossal drop-off from being one of the best three-point shooting teams that's loaded with shooters to a team that really couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat from beyond three-point range right now. I know there are tired legs, and that's clearly playing a factor. And I understand that the Sacramento Kings are just trying to tread water until they get to the All-Star break and get the kind of rest and recharge that they need. But Mike Brown has been very vocal about this team not needing to limp into the All-Star break, but needing to be ready and needing to run into the All-Star break, or at least recognize the significance of not just tonight's game, but tomorrow night's game and the Phoenix Suns game after that on Valentine's Day. It only takes 2 or 3 games for the Kings to fall apart, and this is a perfect time. When you think about an inexperienced, tired team, this is a perfect time for them to fall apart. Again, 45-25, the Kings were outscored in the first quarter. What's crazy is the Kings won every other quarter of this game. Now, not by a large margin. They won the second quarter 31-29. They won the third quarter 31-27, and they won the fourth quarter 27-21. They held the Dallas Mavericks to 48 points in the second half. Hey, that's excellent for the Sacramento Kings team. But believe it or not, the fourth quarter, which was statistically their best quarter, was the most frustrating quarter of this game, and that includes this terrible first quarter. I'll get to that in a little bit. The Dallas Mavericks, not only did they come out of the gate with a physicality disrupting the Sacramento Kings on the offensive end, and with an emphasis on crashing the offensive glass and getting second chance opportunities, which we'll get into, they also were shooting the ball really, really well. They shot 64% from the field, 53%, 7 of 13 from three-point range in that first quarter, and then shot 100% from the free throw line, but they only got there twice. Really, it was the free throw line that kept the Sacramento Kings in the game in the first quarter, and that being said, they still were trailing by 20 when it was said and done. 20 points in the paint for the Dallas Mavericks in that first quarter alone. They were getting to the rim at will, and then they were also connecting on from the perimeter, like I just said. And they were getting second chance opportunities too. 8 second chance points. And then 24 points from the Mavs bench, including 13 from Christian Wood. Now, why is this significant? Not only did Christian Wood have a good game tonight for the Dallas Mavericks, but Domantas Sabonis did a really good job getting Norman Powell in foul trouble right away. Powell picked up 2 fouls within the first 3-4 minutes of this game. That normally leads to a significant advantage when you're forcing the backup big to come in that quickly. Well, Christian Wood filled some of that role, played excellent offensively, and then JaVale McGee looked like the Denver Nuggets JaVale McGee of a handful of seasons ago without all the Shaqtin' the Fool moments. He looked really good in this game. He was giving the Sacramento Kings fits on the offensive glass, and there were far too many moments, including one on this basket right here that I watched and just almost pounded the desk that my laptop was on up in the media section, because 4 Kings stood there and watched JaVale McGee not only get an offensive rebound, get his own offensive rebound, and that resulted in, I think, a foul and free throws, which I think JaVale made at least one of them. All that being said, with how bad the first quarter was, and that is absolutely 100% where the Kings lost this game. You don't have to look too hard to understand that. The fourth quarter, to me, might have been, if it's not the most frustrating quarter of the season, it's one of the most, because defensively, the Sacramento Kings did a really good job. Like I said, holding the Dallas Mavericks to 21 points, and a lot of those points came from the free throw line at the end of the quarter. The Kings did a masterful job defensively in the fourth quarter and gave themselves opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to get themselves back in the game, and they ended up getting within single digits, which they hadn't been in since early on in the first quarter. So they gave themselves a chance still, but it could have been and should have been so much better. Why? Because by my count, the Kings had 15 stops in the quarter. 15 stops, and yet, off of those 15 stops, they only had 4 made field goals. Now, they also made a few free throws, so it wasn't just 4 field goals and that's it. They had a few free throws that they made too. There was a stretch where the Mavs did not score. From the 11:24 mark of the fourth quarter to the 6:14 mark, we're talking over 5 minutes, the Dallas Mavericks did not score. Over that stretch, the Sacramento Kings scored just 9 points. Well, 9-0 run, Matt, that's not too bad. A 9-0 run over 5 minutes with how prolific the Sacramento Kings offense is capable of being could easily be 15-0, 16-0 like we've seen in the past. And there were more than the Kings' fair share of opportunities, especially on the perimeter, getting good looks that were just not falling. when the Kings, who typically struggle as much as they do defensively, and they have to rely so heavily on their offense, and it's worked for them so much of this season, when they're getting the stops needed in order to close out this game, to try and get this crowd involved. And I would say that the Dallas Mavericks did a good job taking the Golden One Center crowd out of play, but in reality, the Kings took the Golden One Center crowd out of play by not giving them anything to cheer for basically 3 quarters. The fourth quarter, with the defensive stops, the crowd was trying to get going. The Kings just could not string any buckets together to score just 9 points over that 5-minute scoreless stretch for the Dallas Mavericks. That's really tough. The Kings had 7 straight stops, 7 straight possessions where the Dallas Mavericks came up empty, whether it was a turnover or a missed shot. 7 straight stops early on in the fourth quarter. Kings were forcing turnovers, forcing shot clock violations, forcing bad shots, securing the rebound, not allowing second chance opportunities. And over those 7 straight stops, just 1 made field goal. Like I said, if offense is going to be your bread and butter, if that's what you're going to hang your hat on, if that's what you're going to use to punch your ticket to the playoffs, it has to be reliable. And while it's okay for fourth quarter Fox to not be as great tonight as he's been in the past, because he missed a lot of shots in the fourth quarter, now he still scored a majority of his points in the fourth quarter. But while it's okay for the Kings offense to slip every now and then, when your defense is doing the work that they need to get you back into the game and your reliable skill is letting you down, that's concerning. Now, having it happen one game out of the 50-whatever games that the Kings have played so far this season, I'm not too concerned about that. I am, of course, concerned about how much the Kings are struggling shooting from beyond the arc, but I'm of the belief that that will cure itself or fix itself, especially after the All-Star break. If we get 5 games into the All-Star or after the All-Star break and we're looking at around 20 games remaining or whatever, and the Kings are still struggling as much as they are from three-point range, well, then we have to reevaluate things and maybe get more concerned. But in addition to all these poor stretches, the Sacramento Kings also, at one point when they're trying to make their way back into the game, they missed 3 straight free throws, 2 by De'Aaron Fox, 1 by Kevin Huerter. So not only were you not converting from the field when you were getting to the foul line, especially when you're trying to make that comeback, suddenly the free throws, where the Kings got to the foul line a lot, and until the fourth quarter were shooting really well from the free throw line, it let them down there too. Again, you want to call it tired legs, whatever you want to call it. It was a letdown for a Sacramento Kings team who was putting in the effort and doing what they needed to do defensively to, I'm not going to say win this game, but certainly get themselves back in it. And that was extremely frustrating to watch from the standpoint of how good we know this offense can be and how much we know this team has to capitalize on good defensive stretches because, as we know, they are few and far between. I wrote down here that the Kings have to respond tomorrow with Luka Doncic coming back in their second game against the Dallas Mavericks. I agree with that to some extent because if the Kings lose tomorrow, the Dallas Mavericks and the Kings are now tied on the 3rd seed. And that puts even more pressure, of course, on the Kings. But rather than say they have to respond, I'm just going to say I'm very interested to see how they respond. 1 quarter did you win tonight. 1 really bad quarter, and it was a terrible start right out of the gate. How do the Kings look in the first 5 minutes of tomorrow night's game? I'm very interested in that. Of course, I'm very interested to see what the Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving Dallas Mavericks look like. And believe it or not, even though the Dallas Mavericks beat you tonight and we're up by 20 at one point, even more than that, I think, Kyrie Irving was not killing you. It was JaVale McGee. It was Christian Wood. It was offensive rebounds, second chance points, points in the paint. It was a team effort by the Dallas Mavericks to really knock the Kings off their pedestal. I'm going to play for you Monty McNair's full press conference. It's been one long day for me here at the Golden One Center. It started this morning with this afternoon with a press conference from Kings general manager Monty McNair speaking to the media for the first time since the trade deadline. You're going to hear his comments and all the questions asked to Monty from that press conference. And then I had a very cool opportunity today that I'll tell you a little bit more about at the end of the podcast. Some of you may have already seen it or may have already listened to it and been aware of it, but I'll explain for those of you who don't know at the end of the pod. Right now, though, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Like I said at the beginning of the show, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and it's the only app that you need at your Super Bowl parties. We're very excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Like, if you download FanDuel right now, you can get a no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57, which means you get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. It's like a free insurance policy for you. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Of course, it's a great way to bet on this upcoming Super Bowl, but they have many fun game lines and prop bets and side bets and future bets and things like that involving the NBA that you can check out. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/LockedOn to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. Thank you guys all for joining today. Before I get going, just want to acknowledge our front office team, Wes Wilcox, who's back there, Phil Jabor, Paul Johnson, on and on. I could name them all put in a ton of work, not just this past week, but all year, and really thankful to them for all they do. Our framework heading into the deadline, I think really two things. One has been our mantra, I think, since we got here, which is to be disciplined yet aggressive when the time comes. But this year with where we're at, we also want to be very protective of the core group of guys that we've had this year that have gotten us to this point. Our starting lineup is one of the best, if not the best, in the NBA. And our bench units mixed in there have been fantastic as well. And our guys have shown they can compete with any team in the league. So we've seen, I think, our team improve throughout the year. And credit to Mike and his entire coaching staff for what they've done here in their first year. Their ability to get the most out of guys and get them playing hard night in and night out has been huge. And for all these reasons, we want to continue to let this group grow and gel together and continue on the improvement path that they've been set on. We're also excited to welcome Kessler Edwards to Sacramento, a player we've been tracking back all the way to his college days. Young, athletic, big wing, extremely versatile. We're certainly looking forward to getting him into our system and seeing what he can do. But at the end of the day, we as always did our due diligence and vetted the market. Ultimately, just made the one move, but we want to make sure that we're letting this group and the continuity that they've shown continue to shine through for the rest of the year. So we know the job, as always, never done. We're confident in the team we built, and with that, I'll take questions.
What's up, sir? When you went into Thursday, did you have it in your mind that you guys were probably going to leave things as is, or did you feel like some more things could have potentially fallen through for you?
The whole week is intense, and so no, we certainly went in, with our normal mindset, and had lots of conversations the entire week, all the way up till the final buzzer, and it just this year. We ended up doing less than maybe we've done in the past, but like I said, our one of the things we wanted to do was be protective of that group, and so ultimately we explored a bunch of things, but none met that threshold.
I know being reactionary is never ideal, but seeing all the moves that were happening in the West, did that factor into your calculus at all?
I think. I would say high level, no. Our group, we do a great job of preparing heading into the deadline, just like we do during the draft, so that we know what our value is. Obviously, as things change with our competitors, that can change that calculus, but we also don't want to be reactionary just to be reactionary. We'll never do that. But the West is always tough. I've been in the West now for 16 seasons, and this is no different. We think we're in a really good spot, but we know we got 28 games left, and we're going to have to go and fight it out with some really good teams. But we're also confident in the group that has done that already for 54 games. So, we're all confident, and most importantly, the players are confident.
Yeah, Monty, defensively, you guys have not been great all season. You're still in the bottom, like 6 in the league. Is that something that you just felt like you couldn't address at the deadline without messing with the core of the team?
I think defensively, look, we know we need to be better. I would say we need to be better offensively too, and I think we can on both sides. We certainly struggled at the start of the year. I think we've been better, kind of in this middle part of the season. But we know we're going to need to be even better, especially with what our schedule looks like going forward. But we think the guys here have already shown the ability to do it. We need to be a little more consistent. But Mike and his staff have done a great job, and I think we're 19th or 20th since December 1st, so better, but certainly not good enough. But I think there's been some signs of improvement. We want to see that continue while our offense continues to be where it's at in the top 2 to 3 of the league.
Monty, you talked about wanting to let this group continue to gel. How much does it come into play, and how much do you worry about not wanting to impact negatively a locker room or team chemistry or team camaraderie, and not wanting to break up something like that when making any kind of move?
Yeah, I think it's part of the calculus, and we've turned over half our roster in the last year. So there's been a lot of change. We got new coaching staff, and we said, I think at the beginning of the year, we don't know exactly what it's going to be, and we want to sit and evaluate and see what's going to happen. And obviously, there's been some ups and downs. We started 0-4. We really busted out after that. We've fought through some tougher times, but I think consistently this team has shown that they will answer the challenge, continue to improve. So that doesn't mean that we didn't explore other things, because there could be those things, but we have to balance doing a move against the continuity, and just ultimately, none of those came past that point.
Monty, how do you weigh the differences between evaluating your team in November, December, January versus post-All-Star break and potentially a playoff run? Like, are you still in that evaluation mode of, like, I want to see how this group does in this situation?
Yeah, I would say we're always evaluating, but less of an evaluation period. We're much more confident for sure now that we're at this point in the season. But there's always going to be new challenges, and yeah, our job's never done. It's definitely a 12-month a year kind of thing these days. Now our job is to go and figure out how to get this group, to continue to do what they've done and come out on top and meet our goal of making the playoffs here by the end of the season.
Hey, Monty. You kind of addressed it, but entering the season, there were a lot of new changes, and nobody really knew what this team was going to be. I'm just curious, was there a point in the season or maybe a specific game where you realized that this team was special?
That's a good question. I would probably point to the Utah game at home. If I'm going to get the sequence right, we're down 1. De'Aaron missed a couple shots. We got a couple offensive rebounds, and I believe all 5 guys touched it. It was completely unselfish, scrappy. We had, by the way, I'll get back to this, but our second All-Star missed a couple shots, but then fought for the rebound. Harrison got it, kicked it to Keegan, who immediately swung it to Kevin, who knocked down about a 30-footer. And the place went crazy. But I think that just showed our guys aren't going to quit, but they're also going to be unselfish. They're going to get in the fight, and they're going to be confident that when the ball hits their hand, they're going to knock down the shot we need them to. So, if I had to point to one, I'd point to that. That was special. But there's been a lot of moments along the way.
Yeah, Monty, throughout this decision-making process, what was on your mind is what would make the end of this season a successful year?
Again, we know what our long-term goals are. Certainly in the short term, we want to make the playoffs. Longer term, we want to become a contending team in the West. But our focus is what can we do tonight, tomorrow, and forward. And that's what I think has gotten us to that point. And Mike has done a fantastic job of doing that. If he's not the coach of the year at this point, I think something's wrong. But to have our team where they are now, I believe we have something like the most blowout wins and the fewest blowout losses, and I think that shows our guys get down, they fight back. And some nights we don't have it, but we're there trying to figure out a way. There was maybe a Memphis game earlier this year where we just couldn't make a shot, but our defense held us in it. We almost pulled it out in the end. There's been other times where it's all clicking and, teams have a hard time sticking with us on both ends. So, testament to Mike and what they've done. But I think if we continue that process, we're gonna get to where we need to get to, not just this year, but going forward.
Do you anticipate looking at the buyout market at all to add depth, or do you think you're pretty much done with the roster?
Like I said, 12-month a year job. We'll continue to look at opportunities that can help our team, but at the same time, not just our starting lineup, our depth has been great. We've had 10, 11, 12, 13 guys contribute. Shout out to our Stockton team, who is first in the West right now. We've had Keon Ellis and Mia Skata and others down there developing. So, we're confident in our roster top to bottom. But, of course, if there's opportunities to continue to help that present, we'll look at those.
Yeah, Monty, getting Domas into the All-Star game had to be a huge thing for you specifically because of the way that the Tyrese Halliburton trade was looked at. But how much does having Fox also there sort of validate everything that happened in that situation where you not only got one All-Star, but you got one that helped another guy get to the All-Star game as well?
Yeah, certainly not about me. That's about Domas and what he's done for this team, and he's just been fantastic from day one. And we run a ton of stuff through him on both ends. We rely on him heavily. It's a pleasure to watch him out there. And then De'Aaron, who's been, I guess, the new award, whatever it is, the Jerry West Award. I mean, De'Aaron's been amazing down the stretch in the clutch. I'm just so happy for De'Aaron. I had all my remarks about how, I believe we have two All-Stars, even though it hasn't been recognized yet. I'm so happy it's been recognized. And, those two guys, they're the engines that make us go. And, it's the pieces around them. Harrison Barnes, who's, certainly, I guess, our quote-unquote veteran leader. He's won a championship. Kevin Keegan coming in as a rookie, on and on. Davion, Malik, Trey, Chemezi, Rashawn, Terrence Davis. We go on. These guys, I think, all feed off those two guys and complement them very well. And, I'm happy for the recognition that they've gotten.
You look at all these accomplishments that you have along the way. It's like the first time since so many years. You get different franchise leaders. You got two All-Stars and so forth. Does this at all exceed maybe some of the expectations or thoughts that you might have had about this team before the season started? Has anything kind of surprised you or exceeded maybe some of the things that you thought this team could be?
I think there's always some range of outcomes that can happen at the start of the season, I think our group felt really good about what we'd put out there and the opportunities that the team had to grow. We got a coach in Mike who we felt could be the perfect coach and has proven that for this group. We had what we thought could be two All-Stars, which has proven out. We certainly wanted to add a lot of shooting around those guys and guys who can play hard and be two-way guys. So I think a lot of the things that we thought could happen, and maybe some folks were more or less confident in those things happening. A lot of those have borne out, and we've seen that. But we're only 2/3 of the way through the season. I don't think they hand out playoff berths at this point. So we got 1/3 of the season to go, and we're going to have to continue to answer those challenges like we've done.
They might not hand out playoff berths at this point in the season, but owners hand out contract extensions. How happy were you to get that, and now how big is it for you to be on the same timeline as Mike Brown as well?
Yeah, I'm first of all, obviously, thank Vivek and his support and everything along the way. And this is just, I'm very happy. The next step in our in our relationship, my wife and kids love Sacramento, so happy that we can continue to grow our family here. But also, mostly a testament to all the people that help along the way. First and foremost, Wes Wilcox, who's here. He's run his own team. He should be running one very soon, if not should already have been there. But Phil Jabor, who, runs our entire personnel, he's going to be next in line. Paul Johnson already running our G League team into first place. I think there's going to be multiple folks in the very near term that are I'm going to have to be negotiating with at future trade deadlines, and they'll know all my tricks and I'll know all theirs. But that group and the rest of our front office, is the reason for all that. And we're happy about what we got going, what we're going to try to finish this year, and now continue to go on in future years.
Monty, back to the trade deadline, can you share any insight on the current market value of second-round picks? I know you have a collection of them. We saw multiple deals with 5 second-round picks being moved for players. Just any insight that you can share on what that value is of a second-rounder today?
Second rounders can be used in many different ways. We've drafted second rounders. We've traded them in different moves. We have sent a second rounder last year for a rights owned player. I think they're a currency. This year there were a lot of teams trying to improve. There's a ton of parity across the league. And, that's a market, right? When there's more buyers than sellers, maybe that inflates some of those prices. But all those things are part of the portfolio, whether we, use them in pick and trade, in other ways. We're always balancing those things. But, just part of our portfolio that we try to do to get this team to where we need to.
Monty, this is obviously a fan base that hasn't seen the playoffs in 16 years. When you're operating at the trade deadline, how do you balance the idea of maybe pushing all your chips in to maybe make a move that's more win now, so to speak, versus, like you said, wanting to contend for the long run and years to come?
Yeah, we've said it from day one, but making the playoffs is very important and is our stated short-term goal. At the same time, we're also making sure that we're going to be here for a long time, and we're going to be in the playoffs. We're going to be competing. We're going to be growing. But I would say we looked at moves that may help us in the short term and help solidify that. At the same time, what this group's done, we have guys that have been in and out of the rotation that we think can help us. So I think we have a lot of depth already, and guys that have proven they can help us. We're happy about that group, and like we said, the continuity of the group is something that we haven't had as much of. We've had a lot of turnover lately, and now that we've had the success there, we think that can be a big part of our stretch run as well.
Yeah, Monty, heading into your second contract in not too long, how do you feel like you've grown as an individual and a general manager since when you first took this job?
I'm way less nervous at press conferences. Which I don't know. I hope that's a good thing. Although the first press conference, there was no folks there with COVID, so maybe that helped. But no, I think we've had a lot of change in my time here, and roster, coaching staff, even front office, performance staff. But we do feel like we're in a really good place. I try to surround myself with really good people and listen to them, and I think that's gotten us to where we are. I'm going to continue to do that, and like I said, we're gonna. I hope the next step for us is the sign of a really good organization is when your folks continue to get bigger and better jobs elsewhere, and then the next challenge for us is going to be how to replace those folks and keep this thing going. But that's going to be a good problem to have. I'm just going to continue to find people that help me and make me look better. So,
Monty, when you look at the group that you have now versus the years in the past, what sticks out to you the most on the reason you guys are having this recent success?
I don't think it's any one thing, it's sometimes it's hard to diagnose how all those things are, but really I think it's the combination of. Like I said, Mike, who should be coach of the year, the culture he's helping build, the culture he's really built and continues to, new players joining old players. So we've had De'Aaron and Harrison and Rashawn here. since I started by adding Domas and Kevin and on down the line. Those guys, how they've complemented each other, and just those guys building off of each other's success and building that confidence that they can do it. And I think every game we play, every win we have continues to build that. The belief in that group is growing, and I think it's not just one thing, and it's the combination of all of them. And again, that's a big reason that we're happy with where the group is, and we're going to let them continue to grow here.
So until tonight's game, today was actually a really, really cool day for me. In addition to the Monty McNair press conference that I, of course, got to be a part of, I had an opportunity to sit down for a one-on-one interview with Sacramento Kings head coach Mike Brown. That interview is out now. If you are a YouTube watcher, I posted it earlier today on the Locked On Kings YouTube channel. If you are an audio listener, it's the podcast post before this one. If you missed it, it's a 12-minute interview. Mike and I talk about a bunch of different things, from having 2 All-Stars for the first time since 2004 with De'Aaron Fox. Congratulations to Fox, by the way, being named a All-Star reserve or a fill-in for injury. And it's a shame that it took that to get him the recognition that he deserves, but hey, at least he's going to be there in Salt Lake City, which he absolutely deserves, of course. So Mike and I discussed that. We talk coaching philosophy a little bit, what Mike has done to earn the respect of the Sacramento Kings players to where he can call them out publicly and coach them up and hold them accountable, and they listen and respond to him. We talk about that. We talk about just his thoughts on the Sacramento Kings fan base, what makes them unique. And then Mike also talks a lot about coming to Sacramento right away to win. That the belief is that this team can win right now, and they're not settling for just making the playoffs. There's a ton of great stuff in that 12-minute interview that I highly encourage you to go and check out. And it's a really cool moment for me to have the availability to do this. I did it for both ABC 10 and the Locked On Kings podcast. And for my career and for me, it's just a tremendous opportunity, something that I've always wanted to do. And shout out to the Sacramento Kings. Big thank you to the Sacramento Kings for allowing me to do it and helping me set it up. But in addition to that, it's only possible. Things like that are only possible because of the support that you've shown me over my career, the support that you showed the Locked On Kings podcast. So I was very happy to be able to provide that interview, and I hope you enjoy it. So go and check that out. Let's take a look at the standings update before we go. Like I mentioned earlier, the Kings are now just 1 game ahead of the Dallas Mavericks in the 4th spot. Kings still in the 3rd spot. The Kings are only 1.5 games ahead of the Phoenix Suns in the 5th spot. They're 2 games ahead of the Clippers in the 6th spot, 3 games ahead of all of 7, 8, and 9. So they're 3 games ahead of a 3-way tie for 3 of the 4 play-in spots. But they're also 3 games back of the 2nd seed Memphis Grizzlies. So they're just as close to the Grizzlies and moving up as they are to falling into the play. And that's your standings update at the time. I know you're going to react differently to that. Some of you might panic by that. Some of you might be encouraged by that. Again, it all depends on how the Sacramento Kings respond tomorrow. I'm hoping it's a better game. It's certainly going to be a more interesting game with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving playing, and I expect this Kings team to respond like they've responded all season long to this point. And again, the first 5-6 minutes of that game, I think, are going to be crucial and are going to tell a lot about the fight and the resiliency of this team at this dog day part of the season where they're so close but not quite at the All-Star break and the rest that brings for their tired legs. If you're going to tomorrow night's game, let me know. I would love to see you. Of course, we'll be here in the Golden One Center, do another post-game pod for you, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope you will join me for that. Thank you for your support again. I appreciate it so much, and can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.